Zimbabwe cash crisis
worse. Talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the 1,000 thing on here called monetary awareness. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some RT News updates. And it's been a while since I've talked about the pension crisis here in the United States of America. So I figured today I will comb through the news and find out what is happening around the world. And so I have a couple articles from Brazil and Argentina, all the way to MetLife, as well as Toys R Us, and some of the states here in the United States of America that are all having issues when it comes to having made a lot of promises that they're not able to pay now due to just not having the money or the funds available to do such. So as always, I'm going to have an RTD live talk tonight. So I would love for you to join me at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time to chit chat over some of these events as well as the tax reform underway. But more importantly, if you're new to RTD, I want to encourage you to click the subscribe button for more RTD news updates as well as interviews, as well as the RT Live Talk. And if you're new to Rethinking a Dollar altogether, I want to invite you to visit the RTD University page, where I put together all my prior interviews dealing with authors, economists, commentary, all sharing their thoughts on what it means to rethink the dollar, as well as other fiat currencies, and in the days ahead, how situations such as this, dealing with pensions, retirement funds, 401ks, and plus and a lot more, will really come back to haunt those that are dependent upon and expecting to be able to receive some type of payment down the line. So let's dive into today's articles. As always, I want to encourage you to click below to actually get a more in-depth look at these articles. I want to just scan the surface just a little bit, give you something to think about, and then at the very end, share my thoughts with you on how this all intertwined in our monetary system and what we can expect in the days ahead. So let's get into the very first article here. So here I have an article from BBC, and it says, clashes as Argentina Congress debates pensions. The next one here is from DW, and it says, Argentina scores injured as violent protest breaks out against pension reform plans. And then the next one here, it says, Brazil tries to avert credit downgrade as pension reform doubts grow. Still pensions, and so it says the decision deadline cannot be extended. It's talking about a situation there impacting 122,000 steel workers. The next one here is from USA Today, and it says, Massachusetts and New York are examining MetLife pension payment failure. It is from Des Moines Register. It says, Iowa lawmakers grill IPERS officials about public pension funding. Next one here is from NewJersey.com. It says, plan to pad some New Jersey politicians' pensions keeps speeding ahead. The next one here is from Toys R Us in the UK. It says, Toys R Us UK creditors to veto plan pension protection says. And so very first one, as always, I want to dive into it briefly, scan through it, and let you read more for yourself if interested. So the very first one has to do with what's happening in Argentina right now. And so give you an idea what's going on. It says, Argentina's Congress has been debating pension reform for the second time in a week amid more violent protests in capital Buenos Aires. So the government says the reforms will help tackle the large fiscal deficit. It said demonstrators threw stones, bottles, rocks, and petrol bombs, while police in riot gear responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and water cannons. So shows a couple pictures here. It says, but the bill has angered pensioners and the country's left wing, including the powerful trade union. So here we have a situation where just the idea that the people feel like they're going to get shorted because of this reform. So they're taken to the streets to let their voices be heard. And so it said the authorities said 48 people have been arrested and at least 100 injured. So this is early on as of today. And then the next article here is later on. And it says Argentina scores injured as violent protests break out against pension reform plans. And so give you an idea what's going on here. Argentina Parliament has approved a pension reform bill following violent protests in the capital. It says more than 150 people were injured in the clashes. So the first article was it was in the process, and then the second article, they have approved it. It says Argentine lawmakers passed the controversial pension legislation Tuesday in a 128 to 116 vote after debating for more than 12 hours. The bill, which has already been passed by the Senate, angered many retirees and sparked huge protests on the streets of Buenos Aires as of Monday night. So give you some more information, a little short video here. And then one of the things I wanted to point at was down here. It says the bill will put millions of retirees at risk. It said it changed the whole pension system, Laura Rivas, a 34-year-old teacher, told the Reuters news agency. We are going to have to work more years before we can retire, and then the pension payments we will be given will be minimum, so it's hurting us as workers. So just give you an idea what's happening down in Argentina. The next one here is in Brazil. It says Brazil tries to avert credit downgrade as pension reform doubts grow. Here's a little something here. It says a vote on the unpopular bill to overhaul the Social Security system. So the whole entitlement side, seeing as vital to closing the fiscal deficit, has been delayed to 2018 after failing to muster support in Congress. So once again, we have a fiscal deficit Social Security program similar to Argentina. Says Brazil's bloated pension system, which is especially generous for public sector employees, is the main cause of a huge budget deficit that cost Latin America's largest nation its prized investment grade credit rating 2 years ago. So I'll say no more about that, but just the idea that once again, another country, fiscal deficit and pension problems, but yet the federal government, the federal workers, public pensions are in good standing. Next one here, BBC. Still pensions. Decision deadline cannot be extended. Again, this is a short article. I can sum it up for you briefly, but it talks about 122,000 members have up to this Friday to decide on how they want their future pension scheme to unfold. And so ultimately what it's going to boil down to is, it says workers also have the option of transferring out into a personal pension scheme. So basically, they have 122,000 members under the generic model of a pension where the company itself will fork the bill for the rest of your life. But yet that's not working because they're, I'm sure, running a deficit, lacking funds there, have more liabilities than assets. So what they're offering and what they're kind of forcing people to do is transfer over to a personal pension scheme, i.e. a 401k, which down the line will not work either. So that's just what's happening in the UK when it comes to the steel workers. Next one here from USA Today. It says Massachusetts and New York are examining MetLife pension payment failure. And so what caught my eye here says millions of Social Security recipients and other retirees will get a 2% increase benefits next year. It's the largest increase since 2012, but comes to only $25 a month for the average beneficiary. And so they're getting a 2% increase, but it's only $25 a month. So you let me know if you think $25 extra will really benefit you if you were the one on the receiving end of this. But it says the investigation began Monday, 2 days after the New York-based insurer disclosed that it is trying to locate a subset of approximately 600,000 retirees who are owed an average annuity benefit of less than $150 a month. So about 600,000 retirees have some money they got to collect, but as you can see here, $150, I'm sorry. Not much is going to really do in the overall scheme of things, but it's better to get it than not. It says Massachusetts Secretary of State William Galvin said that he wrote MetLife seeking more detailed information about the problem, including a list of retirees affected by and the insurer's plan to repay them. It says retirees cannot afford to have glitches with their pension checks, Galvin said. So Secretary of State Galvin said retirees cannot afford to have glitches with their pension checks. And I would agree more like never before. So it's more information here. But the problem is not necessarily a glitch, but the whole promise in and of itself is being exposed right now for what it's really worth, which is a broken promise. Next one from Des Moines Register. It says Iowa lawmakers grill IPERS officials about public pension funding. And so it says here, just to give you an idea what's going on, it says Senator Charles Schneider, the committee's vice chairman, told the Des Moines Register on Monday it's good that IPERS made changes in its economic assumptions earlier this year that includes lowering the pension fund's target for investment gains from 7.5% to 7%. Since those changes have also revised assumptions for inflation, wage growth, payroll, and interest on contribution balances. Says, but while the adjustments are a better reflection of economic realities, Snyder said he and his fellow legislators will still have questions and they have to gather more information. But what stood out here says, we can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend like we don't have a $6.9 billion unfunded liability problem. So they have more promises than they actually have revenue to bring in to expend on these problems. So they're going to have a major crisis. Both Snyder and the rep, who chairs a person committee, said they do not anticipate the 2018 legislature will attempt to pass legislation to implement a 401k style defined contribution plan for newly hired public employees. So what they're basically shifting is the burden from the corporations or the state or whatever onto the people in the form of a 401k style defined contribution, which doesn't give the employee no guarantees whatsoever because it puts all the responsibility upon them, which should have been the case in the first place. But yet, that's another subject. So next one here. Plan to pad some New Jersey's politicians' pensions keeps speeding ahead. So here we have an idea that Governor Christie in a major deficit there themselves, the state of New Jersey, but yet there's a bill which is 3620, which is allowing a former senator the opportunity to switch over her retirement benefit to the new system, which promises her a little bit more money. And so it's kind of controversial in the fact that this state is in major trouble, but yet the governor here is making options for this particular bill here, which is going to benefit a very, very small few, and they're all politicians. It says the bill is being fast-tracked through the Democratic-controlled legislature. It's moving along even though the state's pension liability is more than $90 billion, among the largest in the country, and Christie is calling for more reforms to the system. So he's calling for more reforms to the system, but yet they're speed tracking this special opportunity for politicians to receive a little bit more money up front while the other people suffer. So next one, Toys R Us. UK creditors to veto plan pension protection says. So give you an idea what this is all about. Toys R Us is filing for bankruptcy. They're actually going out of business eventually. And so there's a problem with the fact that they owe a lot still. And so it's going to be impact their employees and pensioners that are receiving from Toys R Us. There's a huge court case in UK right now on how this will resolve. But ultimately, it says UK businesses listed a 79.9 million pound or 107 million claim from trustees of his pension plan in the CVA proposal. So there's a lot more liabilities than assets, so the people will get shorted. So that's kind of, what's happening in the news. I want to take a quick minute and give you a glimpse at all the stories around this planet, from the east to the west, all the way to the south, on what's happening with this pension fiasco, and how the idea that a promised paycheck for the rest of your life is really starting to be exposed for a lie, because the people who made those promises 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they're no longer in office, or borderline, they're probably deceased. And so they passed along a problem that they themselves weren't really concerned about because it wasn't under their watch. So now it's all coming to the light that the idea that because of our monetary system and how we're struggling with basically trying to keep the mainstream narrative of being in an economic recovery still alive, because we're at 0% interest rates, disposable income is tapped out, student loan debt is through the roof, automobile debt is through the roof. So people are more indebted than ever. And so there's no real contributions being made. Not too many people are contributing as much as they possibly can because they need that income right now to live. And so the idea that this global pension crisis, which is unfolding right now, will turn out to be something that governments will have to address in 2018, especially, and moving forward, because the economy itself, once it's exposed for being unstable, like it really is, then there's going to be more questions. And then the contributors or the employees themselves will begin contributing even less, because they'll realize that they may not be getting what they were promised. And so why would they contribute to something that will not be there when they need it come 5, 10, 20 years down the line when they look to retire? So this situation here will only get worse. It will not get better. And so the idea that if you're watching this and if you are in your 30s or 40s, if you think that you're going to have something waiting on you in 20 or 30 years when you retire, and that it's going to be something there that can help you actually live and sustain the rest of your life, I think you have another thing coming. And I would encourage you to really invest the time in your monetary education, become more monetary aware of what's happening around this globe. And then it'll all point back to what's happening here in the United States of America, with the idea that there's been more promises given that can ever be repaid. And so it's going to impact our economy as well as the monetary system from a fiat currency standpoint, because our government has extended itself, and they are in the same boat as the rest of these countries as far as running large deficits with no way of actually getting any extra revenue other than in tax revenue. But yet with this tax reform bill, there's a lot of questions surrounding that. So it's good to say that this tax reform bill will not be what it's being packaged to be for you and I. So it's going to probably play into this crisis a little bit more, because at the end of the day, there's more debt that can ever be repaid. So shouldn't be expected to receive some 20, 30 years from now when it's not even here right now. So just want to take a quick minute, share with you what's happening in the news. Hope you found this informative. Join me tonight, RTD Live Talk at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. We will discuss issues such as this, as well as some of the tax reform. And I look forward to you guys calling in and sharing your thoughts. And also leave a comment below. Click the subscribe and share button so more of your family and friends can be aware of this, and hopefully join us tonight for our chat. So other than that, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.